Thank you, Peter. When is 6 when I start running? It still says 20. I've started. Okay, hi everyone. I am Emmanuel Kolade. I founder, managing director of a London-based startup called Shulph. If I mind the spelling, it's actually pronounced Shulph, as in bookshelf. I tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll talk about Shulph for a little bit, and the journey I've had over the last 3 to 4 years since launching it. So my background is in product design, digital customer experience, service design, that sort of thing. So using human-centered design practices, methodologies to identify pain points in customer experience, and then building useful, usable, delightful products and services from there. And I've done this before founding Shulph for about 15 years or so. And in that time, with that background in design, I noticed certain pain points in my experience buying books about my career, my job, the sort of thing I do, and trying to upskill myself. And this is part of what led me to start Shulph. So I came into this industry about 5 years ago, having no contacts, knowing no one in publishing, having no idea how things work, how books got made. I was just another person who bought books and read them. Shulph itself, the way Shulph works is that our customers, whenever a customer buys a book from us, so Shulph is a book retail company. Whenever a customer buys a book from Shulph, what happens is, at the point that the transaction happens, an ebook is downloaded into the customer's personal device, phone, tablet, that sort of thing, and then a few days later, a physical book arrives at their home. And the point of that is to give them multi-format access to the content. The whole premise behind Shulph is that when someone decides to buy a book, they're signaling an intent to consume content, and the format should be invisible. And a little bit of a backstory to how I came to that. So sometime around 2013, circa one of Michael Tamlin's extinction periods, I went into Waterstones. So Waterstones is the largest book retailer in the UK. So around that 2013 sort of time, I would go into a bookstore, Waterstones branch, say during lunchtime at work, and then I would pick up a book about my job, basically, upskilling. And what would happen is, for the first few days, for the first week or so from buying that book, I would take it into the office with me every day in my, laptop bag on the commute, read it on the commute, and read it during lunchtime and things like that. By the end of the first 5 days lugging that book around, it becomes luggage. By the 6th day, I leave it on my bookshelf at home, where it effectively goes to die. And I never read it again. And this is a story I've heard again and again and again. People typically don't read books cover to cover. So by the 6th day or 2 weeks later, I would feel guilty that I bought this book and I want to learn so much from it, but I haven't read more than a third of it. So I would then go onto a Kindle store and buy the same book again in digital, just so I could, squeeze as much value from the knowledge of the book as much as I could. And I did this 5, maybe 6 times that year. And I thought, this can't be sustainable. Surely somebody is going to solve for this someday. And I felt deeply unqualified to be that person. So I took the idea off my mind for a few years. I was hoping Amazon would do it because they certainly had they had a large catalog of both physical and digital books. And I waited a few years, and they did they had a half-assed attempt at something called Matchbook or Book Match or something like that. And I think that didn't get a lot of runway, and it sort of died slowly. And I kept doing this thing, I kept buying books twice. And I got really angry and frustrated. And around 2015, I decided, you know what, I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to try and build something that allows people who felt what I felt be able to have multi-entry access to the content that they've bought. So I started doing my research into how the industry works, learned about the file formats you guys use, so EPUBs and things like that. But there's still no matter how much I tried to absorb about how the industry worked, there was always a gap, because it takes a long time to know what you guys know from working in the industry for a long time. So we started to sort of put the system together, everything we needed. We started building the publisher portal and the ebook reader apps, and started to set up our relationships with all of the distributors that might help us with the physical fulfillment and things like that. And sometime during me, doing demonstrations and having this early stage meetings with our prototypes with the big five who had offices in London, every time I had a meeting with a publisher, a gap in my knowledge would be exposed. So, for example, on one of those meetings, I had gone to demo our publisher portal. So the portal was this really nice, delightful user interface where an appointed person at the publisher could upload, what you guys call metadata. I didn't know that's what you called it at the time. So you had all these fields, the title, the author, ISBNs. I knew about that. So, and it was this really manual process where for every title you wanted to get listed on Shulph, you had to fill this form with all these fields and browse to somewhere and upload an EPUB file. And one of the showstoppers that day was that no publisher was going to assign someone to sit behind my user interface and upload 10,000 titles. No one's just going to do that, right? So that took me back to the drawing board. That was when I first heard about Onyx. So we'd spend months building this portal. We had to go back and redo it. But every day I was learning about the industry and how things work there. And slowly but surely, my knowledge gaps were getting smaller. So I was getting to know more. What we actually built as a retail company and as a minimum viable product was a watered down version of the original vision. When I did our consumer research earlier on to try to understand what customers would want, so people like me who had felt the pain, the pinch that I had experienced, it became apparent that there was a specific kind of customer who found value in this sort of thing. And it turns out it was people who were new managers, business executives, people who tended to move around a lot but had very strong aspirations for developing their careers, who saw serious value inside some of these career-related books that they would use to basically upskill themselves. So very, very early on, I was able to identify that sort of customer because I saw that customer in myself as well. And the research basically fed back to me what I already suspected. But I am a reluctant retailer. The original vision, Shulph was not supposed to be a bookseller. It was supposed to be a platform, an open platform for publishers and booksellers to play, where the original idea was that I wouldn't be the person selling the books. I would provide a facilitating system that would make it possible for a customer to walk into a physical bookstore, pick up a book from there, and by virtue of them buying that book, they get a license. to access the digital book as well. So the idea was, on that 5th day, when you got bored with the book, well, not bored, but it became luggage, it became an inconvenience to carry around, you could leave it on the bookshelf, not leave it to die. But when you're out and about, say lunchtime at work or chatting to colleagues, you would then be able to digitally summon that book on your phone, your tablet, what have you. That was the idea. But I was met with, on the one hand, with booksellers, I was met with suspicion because I came, as someone who come from tech, and this was a time when ebooks were all of the extinction points that Michael talked about earlier was happening. In the UK, at least on our high streets, bookstores were shutting down, business was closing, everyone hated Amazon. So anyone who was doing anything with technology was seen as, trying to make things a bit more difficult for the ingrained way of doing things. So I couldn't get the booksellers associations to play with me. And on the publisher side, the dust was just starting to settle from the disruption from things like the Kindle. So there was curiosity, but there was also inertia on the side of the publishers as well. So with all those things together, I then decided to go from being an open platform to being a retailer, where I was going to prove the value of the concept itself of multi-format reading. So we went from open platform to retailer. We built in all the e-commerce features, and by the end of building that out, we pushed the product out. We started testing. The soft launch happened. We started testing. We get new customers. Went back to those early users, the demographics. The upwardly mobile, professional people who saw the value in sort of books that they bought for their careers, and we pushed that demographics a little bit more, and we found that it had the strongest use case. They resonated best with those sorts of non-fiction career books. So that meant we went from that original idea of open platform down to a minimum viable product, to something that's still useful, still doable, and that we could, within the confines of what we had in terms of resources we had, to build something that we could push out. So we became a retailer, and then we focused on the specific types of publishers who could provide the content, the books, for the specific type of demographics who the original concept that we tested with sounded with Ferris, resounded with them more resonantly. So the publishers who partnered with us in the early days were those kind of publishers, so academic publishers, and non-fiction business sort of books. So by the end of getting the content from the publishers who partnered with us, understanding the customer base, the kind of people who wanted those books, we eventually started to see revenue. And we launched in 2018. Throughout 2019, the business was doing well. And then in 2020, the pandemic happened, and the first lockdown in the UK hit. And the thing that our customers loved about us at that time was being able to leave the book at home and still summarize when they were away. So with the lockdown, people stopped going to the office so much, and they stopped buying our books, and we nearly tanked. So a couple of months into that, I sat with my team and said, what are we going to do? This could be something similar to the extinction that Michael talked about. So the pandemic could have been our extinction. But what we then did was, what we're known for was that sort of bundle model where when you buy a book, you couldn't separate the print from the ebook. It was a single, inseparable product. Reluctantly, we provided mobile options. on top of the book plus ebook option. So responding to the pandemic, what we did there was to provide 2 additional buying options. So our original book plus ebook option that we're known for, but also the book only option and the ebook only option. And we recovered dramatically when we did that. But what that meant was, it kind of hurt my ego a lot, because now I look like every other book retailer. Again, you could either buy an ebook from me, or buy a physical book from me, or buy the bundle. But it's something that saved the business, so we stayed with it. But what it also did for us is that it made it easier to have conversations with publishers again. Because one of the sticking points we had in the early days was the bundling formula. Because it was effectively 2 products were selling the same transaction, we were always going to be more expensive than everybody else. And finding sort of that affluent customer base who saw real value in that value add, it was sort of customers we went for. But now that we've tweaked our systems to be able to sell just ebooks or just print books, it made the conversations a lot easier with publishers again, who were happy to deal with us on, say, an ebook only basis. So that happened, and that saved us, and we've seen, dramatic improvements in our business, so much so that we then decided to spin off a second business unit. So aside from Shulph, last year we then launched something called Shulph Inc. Shulph Inc. as in INK, the thing you print on the paper of the book. And Shulph Inc. is effectively a traditional physical book selling business. And the whole point of disintegrating our original bundle model was, I believe that until we get to a point as a business where we can provide the content at scale, the whole idea of people being able to leave a physical book at home and access it, say, when they're on the beach from their devices, it's something that tested very, very well. And I think there is a lot of value in being able to sell books that way. But for now, what I've decided to do is to put that North Star to one side, behave more like a traditional book selling business where we're playing in both the ebook business and the physical book business. And the idea is that with Shulph Inc. is 50 times, in terms of catalog, it's 50 times larger catalog than the flagship Shulph brand itself, and is 300 times bigger in terms of revenue as well. Again, that hurts my ego, because I'm making more money being like everybody else, but at least it keeps us alive, and it keeps the dream of multi-channel, multi-format access to books alive for us. So all the money we're making from Shulph Inc. is giving us the runway. So we're completely bootstrapped. We've never raised outside money. And the whole point of starting Shulph Inc. is, it's a much larger catalog. It's more sort of mass market titles. We're getting a lot of data from there, understanding people's buying behavior, and our brand is getting further out as well as a result of spinning out a traditional book selling business as well. And the idea is, over time, I envision that when we achieve the sort of scale we're looking for, we have a large catalog of physical books, and then with the conversations we're having with publishers now, we have a large catalog of ebooks as well. The point that, the hope is that sometime in the not too distant future, Shulph can reabsorb Shulph Inc. and marry those 2 formats back together. But until we get to a point where we've got mass market titles on both of those brands, I think it's going to continue to be a dream that we're able to do multi-format reading experiences at a large scale eventually. Thank you very much.